The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our third edition of MWF Masterclass webinar featuring our new shop drawing engine. If you guys are unfamiliar with MWF, we highly encourage you to take a look online at our products and to reach out to us after the webinar to set up a demo one-on-one with one of our technicians. Our technicians will be able to take you through how to build and how MWF can benefit your next project. Today we'll be covering MWF's new shop drawing engine, which is available for floor and multi-layer walls in the latest build. As usual, anyone who is registered for the webinar will be sent a recording automatically. If you have any colleagues who are interested, please send over their emails. I would also like to remind everyone that you can ask questions throughout the webinar in the questions tab of the GoToWebinar dashboard. We have technicians and salespeople standing by to answer all of your questions. All right, that is it for me. I'll go ahead and hand off to Matthew now.
Thanks, Tanya. Hello, good people. Matthew here with you, and welcome to episode 3 of the MWF Masterclass webinar series. Today, as Tanya mentioned, we are going to be looking at the multi-layer shop drawings. So this is the brand new drawing engine that powers our walls and floors. Today, for time's sake, let's just take a look at walls. For those of you out there who aren't familiar with MWF, as Tanya mentioned, we'd be more than happy to jump on a go-to like this with you one-on-one, show you how the software works and how it can really benefit you. For those of you out there who are familiar with MWF, who are familiar with how we frame Revit walls and get these panels into your project, get ready. Let's take a look at framing some panels using multi-layer and generating some shop drawings. So in this morning's webinar, we got asked some questions about how we put this sheathing that you can see here. Let me hide these walls, actually. We don't want to see it. How we got this sheathing onto our walls in this staggered-like orientation, how we got it to split right here on these guys. So let's go ahead and start from scratch. Let me bring out the multi-layers right here. Whoops. Let me delete these panels. Gone. Let's bring back my wall. I need him in a minute. And we'll take a look at it. So we build our templates for framing our structural templates the same way. We've got our templates here in our template manager. Here they are. I've got some default ones here. I've got one for my NH here. It's the new Howick type template I'm using because I'm going to send these panels to a roll former at the end of the day. So just keep in mind that we've got that MWF framing template built. We're going to open up our project settings right here. We are going to find ourselves in the wall type map right here, wall type map, kind of similar to what we've already seen. And we have all of the wall types from my project. I'm looking for nope, not this guy. It's one of my exterior walls. Here he is. I've picked up this Revit wall type. I see all of the layers inside that wall. And here I can see in my structure layer, it's a 3.5 inch. I'm using a very small profile. I've associated, where is he? Oh, well, I've associated my template to that wall type. Right above it, you'll notice I have the sheathing layer of my Revit wall type, and it's using a 4x8 sheathing template. So let's go and see where we found that. Up here in sheathing templates, we have our default template, so we go ahead and just copy that, or we create a new folder here, and I've put in the 4x8 sheet. We can open this guy up real quick. I've opted to use my 4x8, my sheathing family from my project browser. It's a structural framing element. You'll notice I've put in some extensions here. So I've got a 1.5 foot bottom extension that's going to cover my my floor trusses down below there. But I can put in a top extension or a start and end. Not a problem. If we jump here to the opening settings, I can add in additional tolerances around doors, windows, openings as I need for installation, for whatever purpose. I have the ability to ignore these openings. We'll create the openings right over them. That way we can just kind of trim them out on site if need be, however we're going to be working. And we can also break the sheathing panels at opening bounds. So it'll restart my sheathing at my openings. My sheathing layout, I've opted for a vertical staggered condition. That's what I see here. Once it splits, I'm allowing the sheathing to attach itself or align itself to one of these members. If I didn't want it to attach to join studs, I can deselect that here, and now it will split on the remaining elements. And if we're sending these panels to a nailing machine, we have the ability of selecting a nail pattern right here. We won't go too far into that today. So all we've done is built this 4x8 sheathing template, and in my wall type map, I've associated an MWF framing template to my structural layer, my 4x8 sheathing template to my sheathing layer, and we're going to be able to see how we can create multiple layers of either framing elements, sheathing elements, secondary elements. So we call these secondary templates. This can be things such as furring strips, hat channels, really whatever the case may be. We can control that here and assign a framing template or a sheathing template to any individual layer of that Revit wall. So I hope that kind of clears that up a little bit. But once we're over here in Revit, I can just grab these walls. I've already got my MWF joins in there, and I can just, again, run my quick create. It picks up from those project settings. It sees my wall types. It knows what MWF template to use. It knows what sheathing template to use. And just like that, there's my big panel over there. There are my smaller panels in the front. Oh, the beam brace, it's my diagonals. Don't worry about him. Just like that, all of my members are right, like all of my elements as well. Has come to extract information out of Revit MWF new 4 with the current existing shop drawings. We create a title block. We put the zones in there. We have a zone for every view that we want to see. But let's go and talk a bit about those zones. I would just like to point out too, in the option file manager, when I'm looking at view options right here, that's okay. So I'm looking at my 11x17. I have a framing elevation. These are the view options. These are templates that Structsoft Solutions have put together for you. They lay them out in front of you. They allow you to select where you want to place dimensions. We have 2 types of dimension styles right here. We have a line gap and a stud space tolerance. This information is flexible because all of you out there kind of create these drawings a little bit differently, but they could afford to be even more flexible. The template in the elevation settings here could be even more robust. So that's the mentality we've taken in creating the new multi-layer shop drawing engine. So let's get started. Let's take a look at our drawing settings utilities. I notice I have an existing 11x17, but I want to create a new one here with you guys today from scratch. So let's do that. Let's say new. There we go. We're going to give this guy a new name. I want to create a 24x36 drawing here today. Say okay. We're ready to edit this guy. Perfect. So here we are in the drawing settings. These settings that I'm about to create are going to be saved for me. They're going to be available in every project from here on out. But you'll notice in my view options that I just shown you where we had that framing elevation and all of those parameters you could fill out based off of what we've laid out for you. We're going to create those ourselves now. We're creating our own drawing templates. So that's why it's blank here. I have no view options. But we'll start up here, getting ahead of myself. In the General tab, I still have the ability to put in a view prefix and a view suffix if I was labeling these guys. My famous view bounding box tolerance right here. I like to give myself a couple of inches to extend the right direction, the up direction, and the view direction. Just lets me see everything around my panel if need be. I've got view scale overrides. You'll also notice the pre-compute and the post-auto scale. This is going to either allow us to, well, do just that, pre-compute these view scales to any given percentage, or use the post-auto scale, which automatically scales these elements for me. And we're going to see in a few locations where we can still have, a view-dependent scale in place. So don't worry about that. I'm still a big fan of coming in here and saying, you know what, I want my drawings to be at 3/4 of an inch. It's a big sheet, but here we go, 3/4. I can jump to my sheet processor options. I can add in a sheet prefix, whether I'm using a fixed name or naming these sheets by their panels. So I like to use the fixed sheet name with sheet. And if we scroll down here, we have a numbering method. We can go by panel name or by panel number, really however you'd like to see it. And we can also now add page numbers to our sheet numbers. So out of a collection of 10, 12, 20, 100 sheets, we can have a page number on them. And I have some miscellaneous options right here. This is because if we have an existing project, this was a question that came up this morning, we have an existing project using MWF panels, and we want to add that sheathing on there from the multi-layer. That's not a problem. We can go ahead and do that. But what if we want to handle those MWF panels with the current drawing engine that we're used to, that we're comfortable with for now? Well, we can handle the structural layer, so my panels, with the existing shop drawing engine. So this is the same engine that we'd seen before from the current MWF drawing engine. We don't want that. It's not why we're here. We want to take a look at the brand new options. So let's create some views. Let's create these templates essentially. We want to start by adding a multi-layer panel view template. So we have a couple of different view templates available. We have multi-layer panel elevations. We have panel bottom views, panel side views. We have panel schedule views now. So this is going to be a big highlight for us today. Top view, very similar to the bottom view, but kind of the other way around. We have the panel callout view and the panel legend view. So these are also brand new, and we're definitely going to want to take a look at how these can help us out today. And then of course we have the 3D view. We can put a nice little isometric view of our panel in the corner. But let's just really focus on the brand new elements that have come out with the new drawing engine. So let's talk about the elevation. The first thing we want to do is give this elevation view its own settings name or its own specific name. We'll talk about, or we'll give this one the framing elevation. Ugh, can't have that. There we go. At this point in time, I have the ability to use an interior to exterior panel direction, which is how I frame these walls, so that's how I'm going to keep it. I can go exterior to interior. I can use the panel direction, so depending on if there are certain walls that are different from one another in the project, this one will respect its panel direction, or by topside marker, it's the marker that is placed to control the direction. Down here in viewports, we still use the same zones that we've been using for a while now. So we still want to keep their sheet insertion point and their view insertion point at bottom left. If we want to have a name on that sheet, we can. I like to turn the name options off anyways, so I leave it blank. The detail level, we know we can't leave it as coarse or our studs will come in just as simple line work. So we can up that to either medium or fine. I'm a fan of fine. And I like to see my panels shading with a little bit of edges in there. So finally, down below here, we have the option to select layers by index or select layers by function assignment. So before, when we created these panels and you saw me associate a template to the structural layer and the substrate layer, I could select layers by functioning assignment, or by function assignment rather, and say structure and substrate. Now when I generate my elevation, I'll be able to see my panel and I'll be able to see my sheathing in that elevation at the same time. Or I could use the select layers by index, and 0 being my structure layer. I could say I want any layer on, well, the first, let's say 2 layers towards the exterior face of that wall, or any number of layers towards the interior face of my wall. So this allows us for complete control over a single layer, a single elevation view, or, let me get rid of these guys, multiple elevations in that same view. So the sheathing and the panel together. Today, let's just take a look at that panel, nice and simple, and we're gonna say, oh, well, we're gonna create a different elevation. I want you guys to see myself or see me create a few elevations on the same sheet. We jump to the Dimensions tab. Here we are going to allow you to select where you want to put dimensions. So do I want to see the left elevations or the elevations on the side? Do I want to see the openings on the right? We can say top hats on the left, top, or my openings along top, and or an image letting me know exactly what's going to be dimensioned and where it's going to be placed on that panel. And then jumping over here to labels, I can either label these members along its center, and we're going to have an option to control these labels in a little bit. We'll get there in a second. And if I was talking about my sheathing at this point and I had nail lines that need to be represented, I can also control the nail line color. I showed you the pattern of that before. So we've gone through the viewports here, where they're going to be created, what layer, where I want to place my dimensions, and do I want to label these elements in elevation. Looks good to me. Say OK. Framing elevation view option is created. Let's go ahead and do another one. I want to create a second elevation view, and this one is going to be called sheathing elevation. When I install my sheathing, I know in the shop that they actually installed the sheathing on the exterior face of my panels. So I want to see my sheathing exterior to interior. We want to put it to fine as well, and I want to see it shading with edges again. And like I mentioned before, I can select which Revit wall function or layer function I want to see, and I know that my sheathing is placed on my substrate, so I use the substrate option here. Again, we jump over here to the dimension locations, and I can pick where I want to see my dimensions. And my labels, let's label those guys as well. So again, same dialog box. All we've done, honestly, all we've done really different is perhaps selected different locations for my dimensions and the different layer that I want to see in that elevation. So we say OK. Then we go into something a little bit different. We still want to add in another view template here, but we want to go ahead and add in a panel schedule. And I just want to actually, spoiler alert, I'm just going to close this down for a second here. I'm just going to select a stud. I want you guys to all notice the parameters that are appearing right here. So let me go back in here. Let me edit my drawing settings that we've just built together. I want to add in a new one. It's a schedule. There we go. And we're going to call this one framing schedule. Again, into the bottom left of my sheet insertion and my view insertion. I want to select by layers again. This is the elements placed on the structure layer are all going to be picked up and they're going to be scheduled. And I'm talking about Revit schedules. This is brand new. We're going to completely tap into Revit's intelligence here. Revit likes to schedule everything. We're going to place those schedules onto our sheets. But what we can do is control the parameters that we're extracting out of our studs, so we can control exactly how we see all of these schedules on our sheets. So let's go ahead and add a field, and I want to put in the type to start. So this will be, in my example here, it'd be a 350 S162. I can change its header text. I can leave the field and display type. It has to be text. I can align it into the center. I can calculate the width of these columns. Is it a hidden field? So if I want to have that parameter in the schedule, but I want to hide it, maybe for costing parameters or additional comments, I can control that here. I can turn this on and off after. Or is it a sorting column? For right now, I want to just keep moving along here real quick. We've put the type in. We definitely want to know, let's use the label. We want each individual member's name. So we go label. We can calculate this guy. And we definitely need to know how long he is. So let's go over here and put in the reported length. Perfect. So the type, the label, and the length. Now, this is going to itemize every instance in my panel. I'll show you in a minute where we can control if we wanted to see them all identical members as the same stud, we can group them all together. Obviously not a problem. So again, this is our panel schedule. It's going to be a Revit schedule for our framing elements. We're also going to use a panel schedule for our sheathing. We're going to use substrate. Awesome. Data. Let's add in the label. We want to add in the MWF sheet height and the MWF sheet width, like so. Just give these guys a little bit more. The 2 I'm putting in here is putting it to 2 feet. It's a column width on my sheet, but it will also calculate it, so nothing is going to overlap. Lovely, lovely. There we go. Framing elevation, sheathing elevation, and my framing and sheathing schedules. Let's keep going. I mentioned before, we have panel legend and panel callout. So we'll start here with the panel callout in my project. This one is panel callout. That's the setting name. Bottom left is okay. We'll go fine. We want this in wireframe, or my scale. We'll put it to 3/16 equals a foot. That'll be fine. And we have the option to give it a shade right here. So we'll put it to, or a highlight color rather, we'll put it to blue. Awesome. And the last one I said was legend here. Click legend, there we go. Well, we'll call it member legend actually, or whatever we like. On left, and we want to pick up the members from the structure layer. That's it. That's all we need to do here. Very simple, fairly straightforward. We just say okay. So here we are. We've created those view options just like MWF used to lay out for you. Right here, these view options, we can go ahead and create our own. So we can go in there and put in a top view or a bottom view, but You guys kind of get it. You're familiar with those view options, these dialog boxes a little bit now. So now we need to add these views onto a sheet. So we want a 24 by 36 sheet. And just like we're familiar with doing, we need to select that sheet. So I've got it here in my, make this guy a little bit bigger. I have a 24 by 36 sheet that has the appropriate zones in it. And it even goes ahead and it even auto-filled out some of my my zones here for me. That was sweet of it. Sheathing, elevation, I just like to make sure, sheathing schedule, yep. Panel location, that's panel callout, and my panel legend is my member legend. So here we have the ability to add in some additional margins as well from the edge of my sheet. I know my zones are placed where I want them to be. I can leave them at 0, not a problem. We say, okay, perfect. So we have our view options associated to our 24 by 36 sheet based off of its zones. We save that, we close this, and we're almost ready to get going with our drawing here. Again, the process I just went through setting up these drawings utility, those settings now exist in my MWF installation. I don't need to go through there. I've created that template of drawing settings. Now I can go here. I'm almost ready to generate some layer drawings, but you'll notice I only have an 11 by 17 in my project. Let's go ahead and manage that. We want to add new project settings using the 24 by 36 drawing we just set up. This is what I'm going to select every time I'm ready to generate a sheet. There we go. So it's using the 24 by 36 drawing we just set up with the views all set up for us, and I can see those 6 view options or zones right here. My framing schedule, my framing elevation, my sheathing schedule, my callout, and my legend. So we find ourselves in the framing schedule, in the viewport tab. Everything is just the way I set it up in those view options. By selected layer, it's looking for the structure, it's being inserted into the bottom left. As I jump to layout, I can see that my title text note, header text note, and body text note are empty, so I just need to specify a text size from the project. Now this is the same as we had to do before. Every project we open in MWF or in Revit with MWF, we need to specify the appropriate dimension style or text label for our bill of materials. That can't change because these are project specific elements in that Revit project. However, the templates are always going to remain the same, and they can also be modified on the fly. So that template comes in, knows exactly how I want to create my framing schedule. I have the ability to itemize every instance or unselect that, and I'm ready to create a new template out of this or a second set of options using the same template with different options. Very similar to how we created our framing templates. It's a good way of thinking about it. And then in our schedule for framing elements, in the data tab, I see the type, the label, and the reported length. I can add in any additional fields at this point as well. So if I've forgotten comments or a description, or if I want to put in the member tag, I could do that here as well. We'll come back and take a look at something similar to that in a bit. My framing elevation. Let's make this guy a little bit bigger. Again, it's set interior to exterior the way I set it. Again, my viewpoint insertion points are set to bottom left. I like to have no title here. I actually think I forgot to do that on my framing here. Oh no, it doesn't do it anyways. Fine, shading with edges, selected layer. This is my structural layers for my framing. Cool. Big change right here, dimensions. So before, when we were grabbing all of those little check boxes telling the software where we want to place our dimensions, now we have the ability to select that dimension style for every single dimension string. So I can come through here and say I want it, oops, not radial, that would be weird. My left center top hat, that one actually needs to be a little bit closer. I have 2 dimensions on the left side. Top side, top elevation, 332. Let's move this guy down a little bit to, well, say an 1/8. That way they're not overlapping. So you'll notice I have the offset value, whereas we only had one option before. We now have an offset option for every single dimension string. And of course, my labels, I want to give them the 332 as well, and I want them aligned horizontally to my members. So again, viewport, dimension options, labeling options. I'll just remind everybody at this time, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat portion of the GoToWebinar. I will try to answer some of those live today at the end of the walkthrough here of the presentation. So keep that in mind. All right, sheathing elevation. I just want to quickly go through here because we just did somewhat similar to the framing elevation. You can just specify different location or different dimension styles. If I want to keep them all the same, I can. If I want them to be a little bit closer on the left side than the right side, I can do that as well. And then label, perfect. You'll notice that it's creating my sheathing elevation exterior to interior. All right, my sheathing schedule, perfect. Not a whole lot to do there. Just fill out my text sizes. Great, great, great. Itemize every instance. I want to see every piece of sheathing. They're all different. Label, and my sheet width and height. Awesome. Panel call out. Bottom left is good. No title, please. Fine wireframe, 3/16, highlighted blue, works for me. My panel legend, great. Structure layer, my call out settings here. Let's make our text a little bit bigger, and my view scale, I'll go 3/16 as well, just like that. So we're going to see the difference, we're going to see the brand new member legend and the panel call out. Just let me, I think I made my scale a little bit big here. Try this guy out. Perfect. Close this down. Save changes to the 24x36 shop drawing. Yes, please. We want to delete existing drawings. We're prompted here. That way it'll override any change I make. We'll just say okay. Before I do that, actually, just want to point your attention to the schedules. Notice I have nothing in there. Same thing with sheets. It's empty. So I say okay. At this point, MWF is creating the schedules. It's creating the elevation views, and it's placing it right on my sheet for me. Just like that. I always get a little bit of a slowdown because of the GoTo, but much quicker than the previous shop drawing engine. And you'll notice that there are no warnings. There are no dialog boxes saying that you've forgotten this, this dimension style doesn't exist, or this view cannot be created, because it's virtually impossible to get that dialog box because we created the view options and then we specified everything that we want to see based off of those views. So it's, again, we can't forget something because we created those templates just the way we need to see them. So anyways, let's get the sheet 64 right here. And again, I did it. I keep making that mistake on this guy. What a goof. So I should have left it. I had it right the first time. We'll just tuck this guy over here. We can actually put him inside there. Framing elevation created. Everybody labeled. dimension. Probably could have afforded to go a little bit higher with that guy. I can still activate these views. All of my members labeled. We've brought in a new configuration of how we label these members. This way, you'll notice here we get no overlapping of king studs. So it actually put my second king stud down below here as well as for the window. Perfect. My sheathing elevation, every piece of sheathing labeled. Get some dimensions here on my sides. Perfect. Take a look up here in my legend. Oh, I'm struggling with my scales today. I should have used the new auto scale function, but I tried to show off and it didn't go well. I get a legend. These guys could have been a little bit bigger as well. You. Amateur hour here. I get a nifty little panel legend. Lets me know exactly what size or what designation, what shape my panel members are using. So I've got, these are two different members actually because of the 33 KSI gauge there. And if I swing down here, finally MWF is now using Revit schedules. So if I go here, panel 64, a framing schedule and a sheathing schedule. Every member, its label, its reported length. And if I jump over here to my sheathing, every piece of sheathing, every sheathing panel and its size. So like I said, if I've forgotten anything, I can actually go right here into my framing schedule and I can say, hey, I want another column here. I can say maybe the weight. Not sure, I think I'm using my weighted studs. And I want comments. We'll see if I brought those weighted studs in. I have to put the equation on. It's just pounds per foot. But if I go back into my shop drawing, those elements all exist here already. Again, I've brought in the weight, but I need to put an equation on there. But we can go ahead and easily do that within our Revit schedules because we know how to use, where is it? Right here, we can use a formula, length times weight, to get the member weight. Oh gosh, excuse me, folks. So again, much faster, much more efficient to set up, much easier to use, and much prettier. Move that guy up here, move this guy over here. So I hope you guys enjoyed taking a look at the new multi-layer shop drawing settings, the drawing engine, how we can associate a template to a wall type. This wasn't in depth into the sheathing. I know that. If you guys have any questions, again, on anything else besides what we saw here today, feel free to contact us and we can set up, a one-on-one meeting about that. But that's everything I have for shop drawings today to show you guys. I really encourage you to get your hands on the new version. It's been released. You can try it out. Get back to us with any questions you may have. We look forward to talking to you guys and helping you get these drawings looking just the way you like with the new engine. So I'm going to hand it back over to Tanya, see if we have any questions that come in while I got here.
Thanks, Matthew. It looks like we have a few. The new drawing engine use Revit view templates when creating the elevations. Oh,
yes, it can. I thought I may have forgot to mention that because let me go here. Let me show you guys. Because view templates are project specific. Let me go framing elevation. There we go. Yeah, assign view templates. So we've got all of the view templates that may exist in this project. I've created one here. So MWF framing or framing elevation here. Within, you'll notice now that in my framing elevation, I don't have the ability here to select Revit categories to be displayed, such as electrical outlets, light switches, casework, anything of that nature. So what I can do is select a a view template from Revit that has those elements in there, and therefore then those elements would show up. So we're completely using Revit's intelligence to create these shop drawings. We're no longer taking control within our own dialog boxes of what's to be shown and what's to be hidden. Is we can use Revit to do that. You'll notice I had none selected here, and I can say no and no. And when I get to my sheet, the only thing that's going to be shown are obviously my dimensions, my panel, my labels, and the callouts for my legend, which is right here. And right here for my detail. There we go. So I hope that answered your question.
Great, thanks, Matthew. I have another one. In the past, drawing templates created in metric would not function, so we would switch to Imperial just for drawing creation. Is this issue resolved?
Yeah, definitely. It's again, a lot of the issues with metric were stemming from the bill of material. So now that we've actually done away with the static information from that bill of material and are relying and utilizing Revit schedules, you won't experience those troubles with the drawing engine anymore. So metric drawings, Imperial drawings, we're looking at the exact same thing.
Okay, great. I have one more question for you. The text labels in the framing elevation, are they Revit text or are they a live Revit tag?
These are text notes. They always will be, they always have been. Changing those from text notes to labels. Myself, I'm not a developer, as many of you know. I'm not sure the effort involved in that. We still always have the ability to tag those elements as as whatever you'd like them to be, because this is just an elevation view. It may be worth an offline discussion after the webinar about changing these from text to annotations. But as it stands now, they're still text notes. So I hope you can keep working with those text notes.
All right, I think that answers all of our questions for today. Any questions that were not answered during this session will be responded to by email. I would like to say another big thank you to Matthew and everyone who registered for this webinar. Like I mentioned, the recording will be sent to you shortly. If you have any questions after we close the session, please don't hesitate to contact us directly. Matthew's details, as well as our account manager, Max's, will be available in the email. As always, please feel free to share the recording with any colleagues. Without further ado, we will now be ending the webinar. Thank you.